A Journey to the West. Last time we discussed the fourth stop in the first volume, Napa Valley. I see the first stop was Hawaii, the second stop was Boulder, the third stop was Rocky Mountain, and the fourth stop should be Napa Valley. I remember at that time His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok said, "I will continue my trip," right? We had already reached that point. Originally there were 4 classes on Chetsun Nyingtig here, but I'm thinking that in the future, I don't know if we can find a master who has the empowerment for Chetsun Nyingtig. We can't find one now, and we may not find one this year either. But if we really can't, next year or the year after, we'll see then. At that time, if there's a Chetsun empowerment, it might be better. So for our Chetsun Nyingtig 4 classes, we won't teach them for now. Most people have already received Dzogchen empowerments, including the Nyingtig Yabzi empowerment. Technically, within the Nyingtig Yabzi, there is Chetsun Nyingtig, the teachings of Vima Nyingtig, so you can listen. But strictly speaking, it would be best if they received the Chetsun Nyingtig empowerment. So we'll see in the future. But this year there's probably not much hope. That's not a big deal though. What I'm thinking now is for the time being we'll cover the other side stories. Today we should discuss His power to shift others' minds. On my end, what page is it? Page 240 something. I don't know what page it is in your books. After the second lesson on Chetsun Nyingtig, there's this side story called His power to shift others' minds. Because we're setting aside the 4 lessons on Chetsun Nyingtig for now, we'll continue with the other side stories. His power to shift others' minds. Very early on the morning of July 13th, Khenpo Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche and entourage rode by car to the French consulate in San Francisco to straighten out visa issues for entering France. This visa, now whenever I hear the word visa, I have mixed feelings about it because back when we traveled abroad, getting a visa was a long-standing worry. Now it seems like there are 50-some countries, 20-some countries, 6 countries with visa exemptions, full exemptions, unilateral exemptions, and so on. When we hear this, we're all quite envious. We really wish that back then, if everywhere had visa exemptions, His Holiness might have been able to visit more countries. However, in that era, His Holiness's travels were quite different from many others. For example, when we went to India and Bhutan at that time, going directly from China to India with proper documentation and passports was almost unheard of, very rare at that time. Later, in 1993, going directly to the United States and Canada was also direct, which was probably very rare among Tibetans. There might have been others elsewhere, but it was very rare. Including later in 1995 when we went to Singapore, it was the same. So at that time, the visa issue remained for a long time. Whenever visas were mentioned, I would think, wow, this is such a troublesome matter. They say visa on arrival, you don't need anything. Wow, how wonderful. That's the feeling I have. But nowadays, visas are getting easier to obtain, but health is getting worse. So in that case, it's still acceptable, I suppose. In his later years, His Holiness often said, "Although I'm not someone particularly learned and erudite, I still have very broad experience. I've been to quite a few countries." His Holiness would sometimes tell everyone in class, "I'm someone who has traveled to many countries in all directions, the traditions there, the customs there." His Holiness would often speak eloquently about these things to everyone. So I think visas, sometimes they are indeed a bit at that time, because we were going to the last stop. Actually, at that time, it was the UK and the Netherlands, several places we were supposed to visit. But when we were in San Francisco, we needed to prepare for the French visa. Although the consulate officials had received our passports, our letters of invitation and other relevant materials, they still requested that all 6 of us come in person to apply for the visas. Generally speaking, that's how it is. Last time in Chengdu we didn't go, but now with visas too, having someone apply on your behalf is very difficult. Basically, you have to go there in person. In-person interviews are quite important. What happened that day was somewhat unbelievable. It really was quite unimaginable. Even after all these years, it should be 30 years now, Kay Henry can still vividly recollect what happened as she narrates here. I had been working on getting those visas for months, and she had been involved from the very beginning when we had this in our plans. So she had been going back and forth negotiating with the consulate for several months, but this visa officer, the consulate, seemed determined not to grant them. Actually, visa officers are like this too, and leaders are the same. Sometimes everywhere you go, there are such people. Some people whose karma has manifested and they have power, but they just won't give it to you, being particularly harsh. There are such people. At that time, this visa officer was also like that. He kept refusing to give us the visas. On that day, when we arrived at the French consulate in San Francisco, when the consulate personnel had to unlock the door, the look on everyone's faces was priceless when they saw 6 Tibetans in robes appearing before them. The expression on each person's face was extremely astonished and quite amusing. They all felt, because perhaps in America to see so many monastics, His Holiness, Animendron, and Khenpo Mumtso, the 3 of them, myself, Khenpo Namdrol, and Ngodrup Dorje, the 6 of us suddenly entering their consulate, they all felt quite astonished. At that time, I also felt. They seemed very surprised as they looked at us. Each person's expression was different. At that time, Kay Henry went over everything with the person at the window, using all her skills to continue trying, and he seemed quite determined to make the whole process impossible. His attitude remained just as firm. His attitude was still unresponsive. Even when we came before him, it didn't work. At one point I looked back helplessly at His Holiness, and he made eye contact with me. At that time, Kay Henry was probably truly helpless, truly in despair, because if he wouldn't sign, no one could do anything. We were all already there in person. If he wouldn't sign, then no one could do anything. At the very same time, His Holiness was also looking at Kay Henry. Perhaps he was silently giving blessings or something. At that very moment, the difficult Frenchman suddenly shifted his attitude. Perhaps His Holiness was silently giving blessings or something like that. It's not entirely clear. He suddenly, even though this had been going on for months and he kept refusing to sign, His Holiness was probably silently giving blessings. Sometimes it really is like this. Some leaders, some people are particularly difficult to deal with, but then when they see a great master, when they see someone with prestige, they immediately relax, immediately start to change. There are such situations. At that moment his attitude shifted. He looked through the documents, said everything was in order, and he quickly issued the visas. So why did this happen? Because the materials we provided had been submitted long ago. They had all been given earlier. But indeed later the visas were issued. Wow, we were really happy. At that time in the morning we also seemed to have recited protector prayers or something, saying this was going to be very difficult to handle. Later in 1995, when His Holiness went to Singapore, we were also planning to visit Thailand. Thailand is a Buddhist country, and His Holiness wanted to go. We, his attendants, also very much wanted to go. So we personally went to the Thai embassy. It was a white 2-story building. They said at the time that for people from other countries, we could process it from there, but you are rather special. You can only go back and apply there. We don't have the authority. They told us to go back, so we didn't get the visa at that time. Later, we had originally planned Indonesia. His Holiness also wanted to visit the place where Master Dharmakirti had lived. But because there wasn't enough time, we only had a month at that time. Later, its friendly neighboring country, Malaysia was quite accessible at that time. So we went to Malaysia and we got the visa that same day. So for us, visas in that era, indeed when we hear about them, there's a special feeling. So at that time, having obtained the French visa, the subsequent travels went quite smoothly. Next is the 3rd lesson on Chetsun Nyingtig. After that, what comes next? Let me see. Further down. The next side story is visited the Vallejo Zoo. On the morning of July 14th, Choje visited Marine World in Vallejo, California. Many local Buddhists and Tibetans recommended this place because unlike a normal zoo where animals were caged, Marine World accommodated and treated all the animals in the park quite humanely. The animals could move around freely in an open space, engaging with their trainers or even visitors. At that time this was quite special. It was a nice day as the sun was shining brightly in a cloudless sky. From his wheelchair, His Holiness used a cute little telescope to look at everything. The park was full of lush greenery with birds chirping and flowers smelling fragrant. He enjoyed the beautiful scenery throughout the various park areas, looking at all kinds of Actually, sometimes experiences like that day visiting the zoo and gardens are quite enviable. Sometimes I often recall this experience, and even in dreams I frequently remember it. There were many kinds of animals leisurely resting and walking here and there, being away from the dangers of their natural enemies. They seemed to be well looked after by the park employees, and the scenery was beautiful, so this made Choje very happy. His Holiness at the beginning was in quite good spirits. In the photos below you can see it. His Holiness's mood that day was still quite good. Here there's someone with a white beard named Chagdud Rinpoche. He had quite a good voice. Later Sogyal Rinpoche often asked him to chant the Guru Rinpoche mantra. He has already passed away now. There's also someone with a black beard. That's Jigme Rinpoche, his son. At that time he was at the Atiling Dharma Center. Now it seems he's in another Western country. So that day everyone was relatively happy. Even though it was called Marine World, there were also many land animals. And we even saw yaks that, of course, we were most familiar with. There were yaks too. When we saw the yaks, someone said, "Ah, there are yaks here." It was as if they had already seen someone from their own hometown. Later, everyone laughed about it. In Tibetan, yak is called dzo. A male yak is called ya, and a female yak is called dri. Yesterday I saw something in Tibetan that was written as bull's milk, but it seems nowadays bull's milk generally doesn't exist. They wrote it incorrectly or something. It was a milk powder. This milk powder was called bull's milk. The Chinese version didn't say this, but when translated it was called bull's milk. So at that time we saw these yaks. Going around the park, it was interesting to see so many animals. You can see His Holiness also holding binoculars. His Holiness's mala. I don't know if His Holiness later distributed it or this mala that His Holiness had. Later in Singapore, he also bought 3 strands. One for Animedron, one for Lama Mumtso, the mala that His Holiness wore at that time. Didn't he later give it to everyone? I don't know which one it was. As I mentioned just now, we saw many animals that we had never seen before, creatures we'd only heard the names of. It was so interesting. We also went to an outdoor theater and saw a fabulous dolphin show. Through long-term training, the dolphin could perform many maneuvers that were truly amazing and astonishing. Sometimes it would race against people in the water, competing with its trainer or standing on its tail above the surface, which won frequent cheers from the audience. I've also seen dolphin shows several times. It seems that because dolphins have relatively high intelligence, perhaps in the training process, they aren't tortured too severely. In the beginning, Rinpoche also showed interest in the dolphin performance, but after a short while he started to frown and sigh, feeling kind of sad and saying, "These animals are too unfortunate. They are trained again and again to become tools for people's amusement. If people have no idea about the karmic law of cause and effect and strive only for food and drink and all kinds of worldly pleasures, they are no different from the animals." So in some of His Holiness's later photos you can also see this. This is later when His Holiness went. There were some animals locked up in steel cages. During the balance of the tour, particularly when he saw some animals that were locked up in steel cages like prisoners in jail for life, Choje became even more serious. During the latter part of the time, he didn't talk too much, just kept reciting mantras for those animals, sending them his blessings. Witnessing this, I truly felt in my heart that these animals were really fortunate because they were able to receive blessings directly from a great bodhisattva like His Holiness in person. Actually, from the animals' perspective, they had great merit. But that day, in these photos, you can also see that at the beginning, when we were in that park, we went quite far. And that park was quite large. When we went to that zoo, we were very happy. But later on, His Holiness seemed a bit somber. At this time, all of us around him didn't quite know what to do. Everyone's expressions following His Holiness probably also became somewhat somber. I've heard that just a few years later, Marine World was taken over by the city of Vallejo for having defaulted on its debts. The city officials handed over operations to a company that switched the park theme to rides and roller coasters. Gradually, there were not so many animals left, either on land or in the water. Perhaps His Holiness's blessings at that time, gradually these, you could also say that actually whether it's the animal world, many are really animal prisons. Slowly they may have disappeared. It's said they're gone now. I haven't been back to that place since. All right, that's all for today. We'll continue tomorrow.
Kirgana jirano chupai Chupun tsunen chua chua
Bandar gara badna tsadarda Bandar gara badna tsadarda Bandar gara badna tsadarda